Rabat, greetings. Rabat to our Musba'ul Yasar, and greetings to our YouTube family out there. For those who do not know me, my name is Peti Sina Tebtu Re'e, and I've been a 30-year student teacher of the profound doctrine of the master teacher, known to us as Panabab Yananan, also known as Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, who has been teaching us our ancient culture. We identify as Wu-Nawat or as Wu-Sabat, which stands for those who make decisions based on sound right reasonability. And he has been teaching us our ancient culture for now over 50 some odd years, for the sole purpose of trying to re-educate our people, Black people around the world, to get back to making decisions based on how our ancestors did things, based on sound right reasonability, in harmony with natural nature, based on the principles of Ma'at that we learned from the wisdom of the Hutui, our ancestors. And we argue that the problems we're dealing with as a people are due to the reality that we're living foreign cultures that are not in our best interest. And so the foreign cultures that we learned from the West or Asian cultures are working really against us. And we argue that the only way we as a people, as an African people, can begin to solve our problems as a people is to get back to how our ancestors used to do things in harmony with nature itself, in harmony with the forces of nature, which is how we used to live. For instance, our original cultures, or people identify our cultures as animism, overstanding or comprehending that all of existence is animated, is full of life itself, and the essence of our doctrine and our focus is to become back in harmony with this animated life, or nature itself as a whole. And we call that culture Wu-Sabat, or we use terms like Wu-Nawab, which is what our whole uh, cultural science was all about. And so we are constantly trying to teach and been trying to teach our people that the challenges that we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis is due to these foreign cultures that are causing us to make irrational decisions that is against our own best interest as a race of people. And so the challenges that we're dealing with, no matter where we live on a planet, is due to living these adverse cultures. So whether we're in South America, whether we're in Central America, whether you're in places like where I'm at in North America, in the United States, or if you're in Europe or Africa itself, the reason why you're seeing Black people struggle all over the globe is due to the cultures, these foreign cultures. And we're saying that in order to solve the problem, I repeat, we have to get back to cultures that are in harmony with us as a people. So again, I always try to make that clear for those who are new to what we're teaching and new to what we're about. Today's date, just so you know, is today is the 6th June, June the 8th, 2021, right? And we have these lectures every Tuesday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. So we tell everyone, for those who are watching this recording, we tell you guys to come out and check us out on every Tuesday, NoopooH Live question and answer classes pertaining to the things that we teach to help people in their journey as true seekers of righteousness, as true seekers of truth, who want to be a part of the solution as opposed to being a part of the problem. And so again, every Tuesday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when we're doing these discussions every week. And again, my goal is to try my best to help with teaching these principles as much as we can to assist our people with our challenges. So, and every week, what we do is we try to go into, as those who are students of Wu-Sabat, we try to go into our principles, right? We try go into our principles of our culture. So what I do is I try to share my screen so you guys can go along. Or actually, let me say this before we go into our principles, we go into our prayer system. And so we open up before we do our discussions. We go into our prayer system, and I want you guys, for those who want to be able to follow. Let's see. I'm gonna bring it up so you guys can see, and I will share my screen. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So again, we always go over our prayers in our lahaj, which means language, and in our language we identify as Sabaic. And so the whole point of we have our prayer systems that we encourage people to do it at three intervals throughout the day, every day from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. every day, for synchronicity, right? So we can begin to harmonize with each other once again, as our ancestors once did, from a spiritual point of view. So this is what our goal is. So we start everything out with our prayer system and the positive. So we're going to go through that. You guys can see the screen. You can follow along with us because you have the. I'm going to do the prayers in our language, but you guys can watch in our. We have the translator in English for those who want to follow. Also, for those who are interested and getting access to our prayer system, I have no problem emailing that to anyone who is interested and being able to learn the different prayer systems that we go through, because we highly encourage our prayer systems as much as we encourage our meditation practices and other spiritual practices for the sole purpose of developing yourself or re-educating ourselves spiritually, which is our ultimate goal. So let me begin. Abdul Kalal Namasat Wubazun Aman Kasam Munafa Papaut. Anuki Jawab Pa Ashuk M Papaut. Wu Kala Ashuk Kuun Jawef Naya. Anuki Kasamun M Papaut. Wu Papaut Kuun Kasamun M Naya. Anuki Wahu Ama Papaut. Wu Papaut Kuun Wahu Ama Naya. Naku Kodor Naju Ama Kasamun M Papaut. Wu Khabu Ama Shikasun. Nakuk Kodor Kawan Kalab Hafaf Nakuk Daya Jaweb Papaut. Ama Wasu Ama Dayani Kawun Lake Bakui Jaweb Papaut. Anuki Yabab B Nafasni. Papaut Kawun. Anuki. Papaut Kodor. Nakuk Kodor. Papaut Amul. Nakuk Amul. Lahahum Manahnun. Layahum Manahnun. Ahum Ata Korehum. Ahum Ata Korekum. Ahum Ata Korenun. Ahum Ata Jawefnaya. Ahum Ata Nayawu Anukihum. Ye Ashuk Re'e. Asmua Jayenun. Ye Unataru Akfuknun. Anunata Khraukum. Ye Unataru Akfuknun. Akfuknun Akfuknun. Ye Unataru Nun. Anun. Atun. Atun. Amun. Namazo Awahu. Yehu Mufaku. Yehu. Yehu. Yehu Nataru. Yesaye. Yesaye. Yehu Nataru. Yehika. Yehika. Yehu Nataru. Ankum Ata Pa Mufaku. Yehu. Yehu. Yehu Nataru. Ankum Ata Pa Mufaku. Wu anu ata kharaukum. Wu ankum ata yasanun. Yehu, Yehu, Yehu Nataru. Akfush Muklas Nun. Atum Re'e. Yehu, Yehu, Yehu Nataru. Namaz or Atu. Akfush Anhu. Ye u mukdam u afut nun. Entkum mana yaka laduda salafunun. Wu yasa unun. Mana yaka sawura pa ba'a. Mana yaka kawuna ka'u. Mana yaka ata akh. Mana yaka kawuna bashawu damam. Ye unataru mukdam unun. Akfush muftad nun. Anhu kawun manza mana pa nataru. Akfush anhu. Anhu kawun baba yananan. Akfush anhu. Anhu kawun atum re'e. Akfush anhu. Anhu kawun kafush. Namazo talu. Ye unataru salafunun. Akfutnun manapa mujwa'u. Akfutnun mana taghuan. Ye unataru akfutnun. Mana saya gayara. Akfutnun akfutnaya. Akfutnun akfutnaya. Ye unataru nun. Namazo rabu pa tashun. Nakuk talub tashun bi pa nataru. Mana pa la'en lawi tananu. Kala ranam atni at the laha pa nataru. Wu kala namazo atni at the laha pa la ya kayat iat un la ya pa nataru. Pa sawat wu pa tara. Panan safa kawun pa sawat wu pa tara. Z kawuna nazula laha ankum. Manah saba'at Wu-Sabat. Ame hade an'un Wu-Shafa'un. Manah salafukum wu nataru. Aju laya nafasukum. Afuk shana kawunkum. Pa sawa wu pa tara. Pa hadayan wu pa shafe. Annun tawa ankum. Laha panan shafe wu alaj. Annun tawa ankum laha tim nasuinun. Annun tawa ankum laha ashukuma. Ankum at salafunun. Annun at khara'ukum. Annun talub nasakuma. Annun talub nasakuma. And so nun sayim nataru. And so nun salafunun. Annun at musba'u. Anun. Atun. Atun. Amun. Ye unataru nun. Ye muftau. Ye nataru. Ye atum re'e. Ye natar. Ye nun. Ye natar. Ye nuntat. Ye natartat. Ye ha. Ye natar. Ye hatat. Ye natartat. Ye kak. Ye natar. Ye kaktat. Ye natartat. Ye amun. Ye natar. Ye amuntat. Ye natartat. Ye umafkamu ye. Ye nataru. Ye atum. Ye natar. Ye shawah. Ye natar. Ye tafaf natat. Ye natartat. Ye sabab yenatar, ye natat yenatartat, ye ashtat yenatartat, ye asar yenatar, ye nabab tahatat yenatartat, ye satak yenatar, ye hara yenatar. Natar shalil pameye, ye haptwi yenatar, ye anaktat yenatartat, ye ha haratwi yenatar. Natar shalil pa nawar, ye nafartum yenatar, ye mantu yenatar, ye babtu yenatar, ye sakhamtat yenatartat, ye hata harata yenatartat. Ye bai bish yenatar, ye fa yenatar, ye basat yenatartat, ye emhatat yenatar. Natar shalil pa hawe, ye anhu yenatar, ye matat yenatartat, ye mahat yenatartat, ye kafre yenatar, ye miskanat yenatartat, ye hredetat yenatartat, ye kintimitiyu yenatar, ye hika'a yenatartat, ye natartat yenatartat, ye ma'at yenatartat, ye hrenentat yenatartat, Yeshe yenatartat, Yesashat yenatartat, Yamaftat yenatartat. Natar shalil pa taha, Yesabak yenatar, Yanat yenatar, Yechanum yenatar, Yechanash yenatar, Yefanun yenatar, Yesaye yenatar, Yehaktat yenatartat, Yamash yenatar, Yesadaptwi yenatar, Ye atun re'e yenatartat, Ye dahutwi yenatar, Ye fawarat yenatartat, Yesakartat yenatartat, Yaha yenatar, Yenaheb ka'ah yenatar, Yesakar yenatar, Ye ba'ah yenatar, Ye akar yenatar, Ye emharatat yenatartat, Ye wapawatat yenatar, Ye sakahataptat yenatartat, Ye meritat sakartat yenatartat, Ye sayetat yenatartat, Ye garatat yenatartat, Ye sat inu yenatar, Ye bahatat yenatartat, Yachanam tat Yanathar tat. Yamanak tat Yanathar tat. Yachamam Yanathar. Yamahatwi Yanathar. Yakabef Sananafaf Yanathar. Ye da Amatat Afaf Yanathar. Yameri tat Yanathar tat. Yenisat Yanathar. Yem Dadad tat Yanathar tat. Yanachakbatat Yanathar tat. Yesachat tat Yanathar tat. Yanak tat Yanathar tat. Yedadad Yanathar. Yetum Yanathar. Yawahu Yanathar. Yesas Yanathar. Yanahu Yanathar. Yafnu Yanathar. Yesatat Yanathar tat. Yesakatu Yanathar. Yem Ma'at Yanathar. Yanana Yanathar. Yem Nuet Yanathar. Yem Sataktu Yanathar. Yem Mugdal tat Yanathar tat. Yerohashafaf Yanathar. Yemaratu Yanathar. Yemun Hore Yanathar. Yehu Anun Ata Kaleh Juef Pa'ut. Okay. All right. So that was our prayer system that we do in the beginning before we start our discussions. And we commence when we end our discussions. And the whole purpose of that again is about calibration, learning to recalibrate what we call your morphic genetic matrix. Your morphic genetic matrix is about learning to recalibrate your frequency, your energies, and it is the whole purpose of our prayer systems, and it's the purpose of why we do it in our lahaj or our language. Why? And that's because English is a language that is literally has altered our frequencies, altered our genetics, and it is what has taken us out of harmony with nature, the culture, the Western cultures as a whole. And so we had a way in which we did things, and our prayer systems were a part of those ways of making us or teaching us or helping us reconnect back to nature itself, being one with these forces. And so this is the science behind why we do these things. The next thing we go over is our core principles. So in the beginning, and again, this is for people who are new, who are still learning about our culture as a whole. We try to make it very clear. This is the whole essence of what we're teaching, why we teach what we teach, what our goals and objectives are, what our focus are. Everyone should be clear about what our objectives are. So when you're studying our doctrine, when you're learning about our culture, these are the core principles that we're teaching. These are the things that you must be focused on. And so I try to make sure I go over this because everyone must commit these things to heart. They must know what our whole doctrine is all about, right? And so that's why I introduced this in the beginning of all of our discussions. One for memory drill and for individuals who are new to our culture and new to our classes to begin to introduce them into our core principles of why you're even studying our culture as a whole. So the first principle is the principle of ashak, because and that translates in our language, lahaj we say language, and it translates to love or divine love or the power of love. And without being in tune and connecting with the forces of ashak, nothing, and I repeat, there's nothing we're going to accomplish in the positive. We argue the reason why our people are suffering is because of the negative mind. Again, we argue our people are suffering is because of the negative mind. I repeat, we argue our people are suffering because of the negative mind, and it's only through the power of Ashak tapping into the forces of Ashak will harmony and tranquility and camaraderie become one with our people once again. So that's our first principle. Nothing will get accomplished without that primary principle, right? Principle number 2 is resurrection. We come from a great people. We had great abilities. We're the children of the Nathar, and we are gods and goddesses, right? And we've lost this power, and our whole doctrine is based around restoring ourselves back to who and what we are by natural nature. Once you reopen your third eye, being able to see interdimensionally. Once again, we have dormant abilities, we have dormant senses that we have lost connection with. And it is the whole goal of our teachings to reconnect you. And that's what resurrection is about, reconnecting with your dormant abilities. And so this is again, another one of our core principles. The other is the wisdom of the Hutui and Ma'at. The Hutui represented our mind, right? In our culture, the Hutui was about understanding that all existence is mental, and existence is based on principles of natural nature. And those principles, we lived according to those principles of Ma'at, right? And we're going to do specific discussions on that. The next is relationships. As an African people, we always lived of, for, and by each other. As an African people, we always lived of, for, and by each other. That's why we lived as tribes, tribal living. What they call egalitarian lifestyle, right? And so this is the core principle. That's law number one in natural nature, the preservation of self and your kind, working with yourself and your kind, right? So we're going to get into that. Principle number 5, morphic resonance and matrix based on sound, color, vibration, material. We lost connection with our natural genetic morphic resonance. That's what's taking us out of harmony with nature. Right? So that's principle number 5. Number 6, what is soul and spirit? Your soul is your emotional force. Your spirit is your life force. We're going to be learning more about that. Again, today's discussion is going to be on Leviathan. Leviathan is moon culture, aka religion, aka Western culture. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. 8th principle is health. Without health, you have nothing. Without your health, you have nothing. Health starts with a positive mind. Health starts with a positive mind. As Black people, as Nagaru, as NoopooH people, we need sunlight. We need sunlight. We need water. Fasting is a part of our health practices. The herbal diet, something Dr. Sabi has always taught us. Exercise, key to health is exercise. Having the blood flow, right? Rhythmic breathing, learning to breathe in rhythm. This was a principle of our ancestors. Meditation, right? It calms the mind. Quiets the mind, meditation, right? Concentration exercises, learn how to focus. Our people, minds all over the place. We don't know how to stay focused to get things done. Prayer is about communicating with our ancestors who exist on the other dimensions. Chanting rituals was about getting our body in harmony again with the forces of nature, right? So all of these are about connected to health. And last principle is pa'ut, existence itself, right? And within existence is based on its match, cycles of existence. And existence is based on the life-giving energies of ah. It translates to ether. That's what ah translates. It's what how our ancestors identified. So those are the 9 core principles, and our whole doctrine is based around educating the student about these principles and how to get back to live in a harmony with our, our culture. Now, the next thing, is goals, right? Goals of students of Wu-Sabat. So when you have made that personal choice to become a student of Wu-Sabat, you have 3 primary goals. Goal number 1 is to raise the self. That's what resurrection is all about. Goal number 2 is you're now in the fighting Leviathan against the forces of the disagreeable forces of nature, right? And goal number 3 is you're working to build Sabbatia, our own land again. So to go into more detail, goal number 1. Raise the self is what the Christians teach, right? You must be born again. Teach by learning the culture of Wu-Sabat and learn to live it. So born again is that as the Christians would teach, you give up the old ways for new ways. You give up the old ways for new ways. The old ways is what you learn in Western culture, and then reborn and re-educate yourself about our culture that we identify as Wu-Sabat. Learning to be back in tune with nature again, the forces of nature. That is giving up your old lifestyle for the new lifestyle. In essence, it's a concept of born again. And in that process of being born again, you see right here says your first goal is to correct your name by choosing a Sabaean name and make it known to to all. It's like a rites of passage type of thing. Once you decide you're going to be a student of Wu-Sabat, it's about you living that. You take on the attributes of your ancestors, and a part of that is identifying, yourself with your ancestors' names, right? The next one we have is you must correct how you look and dress. Identifying with your Africanness, right? Identifying what you as an African person, with your African culture as a whole. The next is learn to speak Sabian, our language. The other one is you must study our doctrine every day. Our doctrines is about correcting your mind, how you think. We all have been educated here in the West to think a certain way that has been messing us up. And so the whole point of our doctrines is about re-education. The next thing is you must practice and master our daily rituals that we talked about. Meditation, concentration exercises. Those are musts. The prayer systems, the chants, right? And always be positive. Again, always be positive. It is the negative mind that is destroying us as a people. It is the negative mind that is destroying us as a people. It is the negative mind that is destroying us as a people, is what is keeping us divided. All that arguing, all that bickering, all that debating, it is keeping us divided as a people, right? Next, you're in this war. Once you identify of being a Sabian, another obligation or goal is you're in this fight against Leviathan, the forces of the adverse forces of nature, right? So part of that is this includes working to free Panabab Yanana, who has been kidnapped, the master teacher. That's part of the fight. One of our biggest fights right now with Leviathan. Also in that fight is promoting Wu-Sabat to all, letting family, friends, everyone know the good news about we now have a solution to the problem. We got to get away from these foreign cultures and get back to cultures, our culture that works for us as a people, right? The goal in fighting is to become a student teacher. Learn this information, study this information, and you too can be out there teaching, educating our people, right? And then the other part of the fight is the 5 strongest weapons of Leviathan. And the 5 strongest weapons of Leviathan are lust, lies, deception, slander, and gossip. Leviathan feeds off those energy forces of lust, lies, deception, slander, and gossip. You must learn to fight that. Our people, unfortunately, we're children of lust today. We like to lie. We're very deceptive. We love slander and we love gossip. And it's destroying us. And we had to overcome those attributes that we learned being under the rulership of the Caucasian, because that's what they live by. And the last goal is work to build Sabbatia. We must get our own land back. We must have our own system set up to live our culture. So I say here, we work to support each other in our business objectives, right? As long as they're positive. We help each other reach positive goals. We help to build our own government. We must set up a landing zone for Panatharu in Africa, which means we need land in Africa that would be supported by an African government. And so that's a whole discussion all to itself. And the last thing is Ashak is the key to accomplishing all goals, the power of love. There's nothing we're going to be able to accomplish until we are back in the power of love. Everything is about Ashak. Okay, so that's key. Now, what does it mean? I know. What does it mean to be a Sabian? Very important. What does it mean to be a Sabian? Once you are a Sabian, is someone who is thoughtful and someone who cares, someone who is helpful and honest, someone who is responsible and hardworking, someone who demands justice, someone who is righteous, who are always trying to do the right thing, someone who is positive and cheerful, someone who's loving and peaceful, someone who is clean. What they say, cleanliness is next to godliness. And the last thing is someone who's kind and considerate. Okay, so now that we got through all of that, now we can get into our discussion. And I know there's a lot of talk and questions. And I want to get into our topic, but let me look at some some of the things that, huh? Okay, hold on. So I'm gonna start from the bottom. Leviathan is 6. I'm just reading you guys comments real quick to kind of give up to date because I was focusing on my intro stuff. Let's see. Leviathan is 666 was now. It's now right now. Okay, for right now. Dockerville, who Bill Gates was in 90. Okay. Spiritual point of view for you to claim to have had the nature books written for a number of years. You should know spirits are not in favor of African race. Okay. Where on the planet is that language spoken? All right. Harmonizing with each other if you say so. Okay. Next, Tarabuna, you are most certainly insanely obsessed. It's I got that. I'm only here to address the speaker. Okay, Rahul Bat. All right, peace. Oh, that's right. Rahul Bat to all of you guys. Also, Rahul Bat. I love you all, so I want to make that clear. What else to say? Core principles are the worship of a pet. Okay, that's not nice, Tarbuna. What are those forces you speaking about? What type of forces are these? And there is no way we as gods and goddesses, demigods, is what we are present time. To who they thought, get the moon guy. There is no love coming from fruity to the. Okay, I follow. And question: how do we use the 99 names as words of power? Are we meant to pick one name over others? How does it work? Okay, so this is in regards to Nanya L. All right, now let's see. How do we use the 99 names as words of power? Okay, when you're dealing with the 99 names, right? We're talking about the forces within nature. Like I was saying before, was that we as an African people used to be in harmony with the forces of nature, right? And so that's why our ancestors talked about the subdeptu, and they translate it as the Ened would translate as the 9, right? The subdeptu, and that was Atum Re'e was primary, and then from Atum Re'e he had Tefaf Natak, or some people enunciate it as Tefnut, and Shawa, which they say Shu. Now, Tefaf Natak, she represented Maye or water, and Shawa, Shu, he represented air. So these are the principles and forces within nature. And then they came together and they had Kharadu, or children, and they had Natat and Sabat. And Natat represented the sky, and Sabat represented the earth, right? And then they came together and had Kharadu, children, and they had Asar and Aset, and you had Nababtat, Hatat, and you had Satach, right? And so those are all, each one represented a specific principle. Like Asar represented like resurrection and the forces of death, and like Satak, had different principles, and he actually represented your lower nature, whereas Har represented your higher nature, right? The two forces within oneself that you work to conquer, which is why in our culture it was about Horus conquering Satuk, your higher self conquering your lower self. Okay, and a set represented the throne, because everything came by way of the female. In our culture, it was a matriarchal culture, so everything was about coming through the woman's bloodline. Now, and so it was about paying homage and respect to our mothers, our sisters, our daughters. Okay, and so we are made of the same forces in nature. So when you tap in, let's say you're focused on Tafaf Natai, which is water, the forces of water. We have the ability to communicate with these forces. We have the ability to harmonize with these forces, and we can influence these forces. We have dormant abilities. And if you can say certain chants and do certain rituals to tap you into certain forces in nature. This was a part of our sciences that we used to know, tapping into the different forces within nature. So that's why we will identify with certain principles within the forces of nature itself. And our whole goal was to learn to become in tune once again with these forces. Okay. And so that's what it's all about. Now, when it comes to choosing a name in our language is called Re'an, right? Or Renan, name. And when it comes to identifying or choosing or really correcting your name, right? It's not even about choosing your name, it's correcting your name. That is about identifying your spirit personality and choosing a name that's in harmony with your personality, or choosing a name that you're trying to become. Okay, something you're striving to become. You choose the name. So that, all of that stuff is important when it comes to helping to make a decision. Okay, so all right, so now I hope that addressed you guys question. Okay, question from T Tiger. I'm curious, if you had a past life, why would you be back here on Earth again? Real good question. I'll deviate and I'll address that real quick because I think it's an important question, right? So let me see. The way I'm going to answer that is I need to find a particular book that we put out. Okay, this particular book right here. This actual this is a Master Secrets, number 19. It's called The Spiritual You After the Physical You Die. Now, in this particular book, it's right here in the first paragraph. Let's say Aye Marura Kharadu Shilil Wunawap Enkum Nawap U. And it says, my beloved children of Wunawap, you Nawapians, you ask me concerning your Ka'ah after physical Mawat, death. Does it have a survival? Yet you can repeat lives from 24 Dawa'at cycles to 24,000 Dawa'at cycles. The Ka'ah is its personality you. And as for your Ba'ah, it is the Tashar al, emotional you linked to the Ahich Uyi, the etheric you. It's your Ka'ah that feeds your body from the mental reservoir into your single Akal mind. Okay, so now, what did I just read? When you go back to the first paragraph, it says you have anywhere from 24 Dawa'at cycles to 24,000 Dawa'at cycles. Those are incarnations, reincarnations. What does that mean? That means that the whole goal of all Musba'u, all children, all African children, all children of the sun, all black people on earth, your whole goal is resurrection. If you're on a planet like that, like this planet on the third, if you're trapped on the third dimensional planet like this, you have been basically cast out of the heavens. Is a bad way of that's a whole nother discussion in itself. But the best way I can explain it is that if you're on a planet like this, okay, is due to the fact that you were cut off from the higher dimensions. Your whole goal, or what we call resurrection, is re-educating yourself so that you can get back into the higher dimensions. Okay, so that's your whole goal of being down here. Unfortunately, most people, as you notice, most of our people who live on Earth, they get caught up in the global culture or the ruling force. And the ruling force on earth right now is Leviathan, ruled by the children of Leviathan, aka the moon children, aka the Caucasian race. You get caught in that culture and you don't develop yourself spiritually. And what happens if you don't develop yourself spiritually, okay, which is what we call restoration of your soul, because you need your soul in order to go into the higher dimensions. And our people, because they live this foreign culture, they never develop themselves spiritually. So when they die, they lack the soul force to be able to move into the higher dimensions. And because of that, they wind up reincarnating. And so unfortunately, a lot of our people who are transitioning, aka dying, they're reincarnating because of their desire for the physical world. So it's not that people are, how can I say, when you ask the question about have been cast out many times here, right? Okay. A curious past, like, why would you be back here? Yeah, you'll be back. The only reason why people are coming back is because they get caught up in the lower cultures here. So you wind up reincarnating, but you have your spirit force can only incarnate but so many times. Like we're teaching, you only have 24,000 life cycles before you become what we call a disembodied spirit or disembodied soul, where you can't even incarnate no more. This is what happens to most Caucasian Mukasu people. Most of them become disembodied souls. They can't incarnate any longer because they lack the spirit energy to do it, and they become disembodied souls. And that's what people call ghosts. All these ghosts that people are reporting or talking about are spirits that couldn't incarnate anymore. And over time, they dissipate into the universe, right? And so your goal while you're on this type of dimension is to resurrect. And you get a certain amount of lifetimes to do that, to correct yourself, to elevate into the higher dimensions. That's how you earn, as we call, eternal existence. Once you learn how to once you are able to resurrect. So I hope that helps. Now that's a very, and I just want to say that's a very involved subject matter, and we will get more in depth in it, but that's just to try to quick synopsis. Okay. All right. So we all have been cast out many times, even you. Yes, me. Listen, anybody that's on this dimension, you're only here. You gotta understand the reason why, as a spirits, right? We're only here is because we're attached to this dimension. We haven't successfully resurrected to the higher dimension. I mean, anybody who's on this planet, everybody who's on the third dimensional planet, who's stuck in this time zone. Okay, everybody on Earth has been cast out, so to speak. No, there are no exceptions outside of spirit beings who incarnate from higher dimensions to educate and teach, like the master teacher. That's a little bit different scenario, right? Now, let's go on to say, do you consider reincarnating in an animal form as the Hindu? No, no, that doesn't. That's not facts. That's not right knowledge. Now, that's why I said we have to. You guys got to learn about morphic resonance. Once you become educated about the energy fields, each race represents an energy frequency. That's why the races are different, because the spirit forces of an African, our spirit force and vibrations are different than every other race on Earth. And so when you, because you're talking about physical bodies, right? Your spirit is your spirit force. We're of 90 the spirit forces, okay? And so you don't drop down to a lower spirit force, which is the animal kingdom, unless you mix it in like the Mukasu, who mix in with these kind of spirits. That's a whole nother thing. And the problem with the Hindus, they used to practice bestiality, and so they're mixing in with actual animals. That's a whole discussion all to itself, which is why they teach that stuff. Okay, but that has nothing to do with our culture. The Hindu culture has nothing to do with our culture. Unfortunately, majority of the cultures on the continent in Africa are of Hindu origin. I repeat, majority of the spiritual traditions that's in Africa, they're of Hindu origin. Okay, and that started with ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt was the beginning of pushing Hindu doctrine. The only time you get into our real culture when you're looking at Egypt is you have to go into what we were teaching in the mystery schools, where we were still teaching Wu-Sabat or Wu-Nawab, while a lot of them people were living a Hindu culture that dealt with the signs of the zodiac. This was the beginning of religion. That's a whole discussion all to itself. Okay. What else? What else he said? But if I reincarnate as a Hindu, no, you're not gonna reincarnate. You're not gonna reincarnate. The only way you can see. All right. Listen. The Again, like I said, that's a very involved subject matter. The problem that we're dealing with is that we as African people have been mixing our bloodline for the last 6,000 years. I repeat, the problem that we're dealing with is that we as Africans have been mixing our bloodline for the last 6,000 years. First thing I need to tell you, you guys, you have to watch the lecture we did on the races of nature by nature. Okay, I'm going to pull it up. You guys must study. You don't just look at the lectures. You got to study these lectures. I did this lecture, The Races of Nature by Nature, aka What is a Human Being? You have to study these lectures. It's very important because you got to understand the difference between the different spirit forces. You have 9 ether spirit forces, 6 ether spirit forces, 9 ether spirit forces, 6 ether spirit forces. The problem is our people have been mixing in for the last 6,000 years with 6 ether spirits, the children of 6 ether. And so if you have a child, let's say you know, they promote all this mixed, race marriages and all that mixing in. So when a black person and a white person get together and they marry and they have children, now that children have 2 spirit forces moving through their bloodline. That child will have 6 ether spirit forces moving through him, and that child's going to have 9 ether spirit forces moving through his personality, right? Now, here's the thing. That child can choose. He can look black on the outside, but act like a Caucasian. He can look black on the outside, but act his personality is like a Caucasian because he's tapped in to his 6 ether bloodline. And so let's say now, you know, that spirit, because he's of 6 ether bloodline, when it reincarnates of that bloodline. Again, it can get very tricky because this is a very complex subject matter. But we're gonna get there. We're gonna go, we're gonna get into those topics. But I'm just trying to say it's very involved. Please watch that lecture. In fact, just take your time and watch most of the lectures that we put out on this channel, because we have addressed this subject on many different levels. This particular lecture, The Races of Nature by Nature, focused on that specifically. But a lot of our lectures, we touch on these things. Okay. So the next thing is the master teacher in jail, right? And how is he in jail and he's not from Earth? Again. All right. This is what I'm trying to say. That's why I said you guys have to watch. You have to watch these. I said, let me do this. I said, when you become a Sabian, right? That's why I go over these core principles. Let me go back to it. When you go back to the core principles and you go to the goals of Wu-Sabat, and I said, goal number 1 is to raise the self. And I said, you must be born again as the Christians teach by learning the culture of Wu-Sabat and live it. Okay, so what do I mean by that? what our people don't realize, everything that you've been taught by the European. And unfortunately, we think like the European and we calculate like the European. And unfortunately, we reason like the European. And I'm here to tell you, everything that demon taught you is lies. And I mean everything. There's nothing that they taught us that's really rooted in facts, including what a human being is. We don't even know what a human being is. That's why we're constantly teaching you must re-educate yourself spiritually. You must re-educate yourself spiritually. Humans are so caught up with what they see in the mirror, their physical body, and don't understand that you are incarnation. You are, I repeat, the human being are nothing but incarnations. And as an incarnated spirit force, you're coming, we originate from different star systems. We must understand that. You're more than what you see in the mirror. So when a master teacher says he's from another planet, he's talking about the spirit force that incarnated into his physical body, because he keeps telling, we always teach, the master teacher was born in 1945 in Ghana and raised here in America as a baby to an adult. We always taught that. He was born in Africa and raised in America. I repeat, born in Africa, raised in America. So if he was physically born here, that means he has a human body. But because we lost the knowledge of what an incarnation is, that's why we don't understand it. In order for a being from another galaxy to come to a planet like this, they can come many different ways. They can come physically. Now, if they come physically, like all these UFOs in the media today, those are beings who are in crafts and they come here physically. Then you have beings like the master teacher who come here through incarnations, where they come as spirit forces and incarnate into the body. That's a totally different way. And we have to re-educate ourselves about what a spirit being is. Okay, and so that's very important. That's very important, beginning to comprehend the difference between being a human being and being an incarnation. Okay. And as a human being, you're subject to the laws, rules, and regulations of the planet that you live on. I repeat, as a human being, you're subject to the laws, rules, and regulations of that particular planet. That's why you don't see ETs running around in the street, because they're of higher vibrational dimensions. They couldn't live on this planet. It would be against universal law for a being like that to be on this planet. You know, but I know we get tricked with movies like Superman and Aquaman and all these advanced beings they show on the planet Earth. Nature wouldn't allow that because it would create an imbalancement on the Earth. So they wouldn't allow advanced beings like that to interface with humans who are extremely primitive like that. You know, so all I'm saying, there's a whole lot to learn. Now, let's see. Question: the Philadelphia experiment caused a vortex to open. The whole explanation of the time catching up to now. Could you explain that? I didn't understand how time is catching up to now. Okay. That first of all, let me just say this. That's an excellent question, right? That's an excellent question. Kabeta, can you give me towel? My hand towel. That's an excellent question. But it's a very involved, a very complex question to try to explain that to you. Here's the thing. What you guys have to learn, and I said it, you got to learn this. You got to learn what the smack circle is. Begin to comprehend some of these questions you guys are asking. You have to comprehend what the smack circle is, right? So that's one. And then you have, because what you're trying to comprehend is how cycles change from one cycle to the next. So when you look at the smack circle, where you have the numbers, and I talked about this before, you have 3 south on the bottom, and then you got on the right side, you got 4 east, 5 east, 6 east, 7 east, 8 east, and up to 9 north, right? And then it goes down on the west side. So you got 8 west, 7 west, 6 west, 5 west, and 4 west. And all that means is the ether energy that's in a universe. So right now we're existing in a universe at 3 south. So it was the dominating forces of 6 ether, which we was in a 3 ether cycle, the cycle of ghosts. Okay, 3 ether cycle of ghosts, and we're moving out of that because of the dimensional shift, because we're moving into what we call the sun cycle. And so because we're moving into the sun cycle, what's happening is the suns in the universe are heating up, and they're beginning to emit non-ether energies onto the planet and throughout the universe. Okay, and so because because the planet Earth is heating up, and more photons, which they call sunshine, is hitting the Earth. That's why the Earth is getting hotter, right? And so the hotter it gets, the more photons hits the Earth. It's altering time. It alters the timeline. And so as the timeline is being altered, as more sun energy is hitting the Earth, because it's speeding things up, it's speeding up time. It's altering time from one dimension, and we're phasing into a whole new dimensional cycle. As more sun energy hits the planet, it alters the time. And that's what we're talking about. You're moving into the cycle of now. See, right now, prior to this event happening and prior to the master teacher coming, our people were locked into the moon cycle, and we were locked in a time warp. ETs are not trapped. ETs can transverse different time cycles, and we used to live like those beings, but we got trapped in this dimension, and we lost the knowledge of how to interdimensionally travel. We used to be able to galactically travel. We used to travel throughout the multiverse, but you have to be able to go through many different time frames to do that. And when we got stuck on this planet, it locked us in time. And so as we're moving into a new cycle, into this new dimensional shift, time is being altered. And so we're moving into the process of now. Now would be the timeline where you can break out of this cycle. The time is now. Or the time is now to resurrect, because the spell has technically been broken. Again, which is what our discussion is today about the spell, right? And so, okay, so the Philadelphia experience caused a vortex to open. Got it. The whole explanation of time catching up to now. Could you explain? Okay, yeah, no, and catching up. So I hope that helped. The next one is, I agree with you on the European manipulation, but I do see a lot of African Jews to live right in other Bible. What are you trying to say? What is that trying to say? I agree with you on the European manipulation, but I do see a lot of African Jews to live right in other Bible. If you're trying to say, as I said before, the Bible, all religions are plagiarized from Egyptian and Sumerian culture. All religions, Judaism was created by the Greeks. I repeat that. The Jews are the Greeks are the Jews, the Jews are the Greeks are the Jews. That's a whole explanation all to itself to explain that. But the Jews are the Greeks, and the Greeks are the Jews. The Romans are the ones who created the Christianity. The Greeks created Judaism, and the Romans created Christianity. And Greeks ruled Egypt, right? They ruled Egypt, okay? And they lived in Samaria. And so, or Babylon, so they mixed Babylonian teachings and Egyptian teachings, and that's how they created the Old Testament. And the New Testament, the Romans created from studying Egyptian culture. The whole Jesus Christ, we talked about that last week. The whole Jesus Christ and Mary and the Holy Ghost, all that stuff is Egyptian doctrine. The story of Asar, Set, and Satuk, all of that stuff comes from Egyptian, culture, right? And so, the Bible as we know it is plagiarized doctrine. They took a story and they altered, they changed it around. I said it before, like Robin Hood, right? They got like 5 different Robin Hoods, and I like watching Robin Hood, and they tell a story differently. So you got the Kevin Costner Robin Hood movie, which is the Prince of Thieves, him and Morgan Freeman, and then you got the Robin Hood with Russell Crowe. He played Robin Hood, and they changed the story up again. Then you had Jamie Foxx. He was in the last one. They did Robin Hood with Jamie Foxx and some other white guy, and they changed it up even more. Well, that's kind of what they did with these religions. They took a culture and or they borrowed the culture and they started altering stuff, using the same themes and concepts, but they changed the storylines around. So there's a lot of similarities. That's what we're saying. There's a lot of principles in the Bible that come out of African culture. There's prophecies in the Bible that's very true. I said before, read Matthew chapter 24, talks about the end of the world. That's a true prophecy. You guys got to understand, when the Greeks conquered us, right? When the Greeks, Alexander the Greek came into Kemet in the year 300 BC, he started persecuting our people. There was civil wars going on with the Greeks. We were fighting them, and the Greeks were killing our prophets. That's where the prophets come from. All of the prophets that the Bible was talking about, all that come out of Kemet. All of it come out of Kemet. In fact, you guys know Amenhotep III. Who is Amenhotep III? Amenhotep III and his wife, Nisutet, a female ruler called T. His wife T had Amenhotep III and his wife T. Now T had a brother. Her brother name was Akhnun. Akhnun was a prophet in ancient Kemet. There were many prophets in ancient Kemet who were writing down prophecies and teaching about what was going to happen to their descendants, which is us. That's why if you read Genesis chapter 15, verse 13, it talks about us being kidnapped here in the West for 400 years under the rulership of the Amorite, which is the Caucasian. That's an ancient prophecy. And it's real, it's facts coming out of the Bible. So again, they took facts of our culture and mixed in lies. So, it gets complex, but keep going. Area 51 supposedly have alien beings. It's been reported for years through different races, except blacks. Okay. What is the story of Asar, Set, Satuk, Haru, symbolic of? That's that story is about resurrection. Okay. That story is about resurrection. About our people basically lost their ability. Death wasn't a part of our culture. I repeat, death wasn't a part of our culture, but we got stuck in the cycle of death, the cycle we're living in, which is the cycle of death. But let me go into this, because I wanted to go through this real quick about Leviathan, and then we can go into more of the details of the questions. But I need to go through this. You guys need to hear this. The spell of Leviathan, because this is what we wanted to cover. Okay, and then y'all can still ask questions and I'll address them as I'm going through this, but I want to get through this real quick. Now, the spell of Leviathan, you guys see my screen. Okay, so Leviathan is 6 ether spirit force that has plagued the universe for the past 18 million years. So when you look at the smack circle, okay, Leviathan started at 6 west on the smack circle. Okay, 6 west. See this right here, and it's called Amun Re, and you go from 6 west to 3 south. This is where we are now, 3 south. That took 18 million years. 6 west was the beginning of Leviathan. Okay, and we've been in the cycle of Leviathan for the last 18 million years. That's a long time, guys. Now let's keep going. Now, 6 ether spirit forces are mental creation forces that are adverse to 9 ether creation forces. 6 ether spirit forces are the power spirits of sex, and 9 ether spirits are the power forces of the mind. 6 ether spirit forces are most powerful during moon cycles within nature, and 9 ether spirit forces are most powerful during sun cycles within nature. 6 ether spirit forces live adverse to natural nature, and 9 ether spirit forces live in harmony with natural nature. The spell of Leviathan means those who live adverse to natural nature, which is a culture that triggered destructive forces within natural nature to maintain balance. And that's what we call Ma'at. Ma'at is about balance, the balancing forces of nature. Question: how does Leviathan get its power? Answer: Leviathan gets its power from sex, bloodshed, lust-based desires, and religious worship. 6 ether spirits within us causes our desires for unhealthy sex practices, which is the root of unwanted pregnancies, porn addictions, strip club addictions, rape, molestations, etc. 6 ether spirits feed off of bloodshed of all kinds, such as murder, accidents that cause bloodshed, sports that cause bloodshed, animal bloodshed, animal bloodshed for food, animal sacrifice for religious purposes, which are very common in African religious rituals such as voodoo, Santeria, the Yoruba, the Ife, and many others. Keep in mind, Christianity is based on the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Now, 6 ether spirits feed off of our lust-based desires of all kinds. 6 ether spirits feed off of our emotional energy we put into our religious worship of unfamiliar spirits, which is something we should never do, which is why in our culture of Wu-Sabat, we only make contact with 9 ether spirit forces that we know and are familiar with, aka our ancestors we know, such as family, friends, grandparents, or positive Black role models who have transitioned, such as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Marcus Garvey, Dr. Sebi, Dr. Khalid Muhammad, Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, George Washington Carver, Nelson Mandela, Stephen Biko, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Harriet Tubman, Amenhotep III, Mansa Musa, Kwame Nkrumah, Nisutet T, Nisut Shabaka, Imhotep, Nisut Zoser, and the Mahdi Muhammad Ahmed, etc. So, meaning as 9 ether spirits, we only make contact with spirits we're familiar with. We only make contact with spirit forces we know, because we know their nature. We know who they are. These are the spirit forces we make contact. We do not make contact with unfamiliar spirits. I repeat, we do not make contact with unfamiliar spirits, which is what religion teaches. For instance, so I said here, but never unfamiliar spirits who are not of our bloodline, or spirits of our bloodline that ask for blood sacrifices that our people call on each and every day, such as power names like God, Jesus, Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh, Muhammad, Christ, Buddha, religious saints, Shiva, beings that no one alive ever met, no historical record to prove they ever lived. They only exist in the hearts and minds of their believers, and these irrational practices make 6 ether spirits more powerful. So, we do not call on unfamiliar spirits. I repeat, you do not call on unfamiliar spirits, which is what religion teaches you to do. Call on all these different names of spirit forces you never met. You don't know who they are. You don't know their nature. You don't know their purpose. You don't know their agenda. Nothing. We as Africans never did that. We only identify with spirit forces that we knew. Our ancestors that lived, they were physical. They lived their lives. We knew what they represented in life. And we make contact with them when they transitioned. We make contact with them when they transitioned. We make contact with them when they transitioned. We never called on unfamiliar spirits. That's what 6 ether try to teach you to do. And these 6 ether spirits are the ones that got you doing all kinds of crazy behavior. Let's keep going. Black people will continue to suffer as long as they continue to live 6 ether culture, aka adverse to nature's rules and codes of conduct. Black people are confused as to why they suffer so much is because they are under the spell of Leviathan that limits their ability to reason soundly in order to solve their own problems. Six-ether spirits are the forces of trickery, deception, illusions, lies, belief-based decision-making, and ignorance. All of these human characteristics are from these spirit forces within humans. And sadly, all straight-haired peoples are the descendants of these spirit forces. Now, six-ether spirit forces are within Black people worldwide because of our mixing in with six-ether children, aka all straight-haired peoples for the last 6,000 years. Six-ether spirit forces within Black people causes Black people to make irrational, destructive decisions such as drug use, alcohol addiction, unhealthy sex relations, gambling addictions, violence against themselves, eating addictions, uncontrolled lust behavior of all kinds. Six-ether spirit forces within Black people causes them not to be able to reason correctly in order to solve their problems, in order to solve their own problems, which is why they are easy prey to religious belief systems and unscrupulous leadership. It would take 4 generations of living our culture of Wu-Sabat with no race mixing for Black people worldwide to purge six-ether spirit forces from our bloodline. Black people only solution to fighting six-ether forces within themselves is to embrace our culture we call Wu-Sabat, which is based on right knowledge that leads to right thinking and right behavior, which creates the right results for better living. Black people must develop the willpower to say no to drug use, no to alcohol, no to race mixing, no to violence against themselves, no to poison foods, no to foreign cultures of all kinds that is against the best interests of themselves. Black people's first step towards the solution to their problems is to first acknowledge their problem, acknowledge the cause of their problem, and acknowledge the only solution to their problem is spiritual knowledge to counter their spirit ignorant behavior. We must realize the nature and goal of Leviathan is to take that which is of 9-ether and turn it into 6-ether by increasing the disease we call ignorance to the rules and codes of natural nature. For example, the first 4 rules of natural nature we learn from the wisdom of the Hutui. We violate, which is the cause of much of our suffering. Rule number 1 is preservation of self and kind. We violate that. Rule number 2 is the rule of the opposites of nature. We violate that. Rule number 3, the rule of love and peace. We violate that. And rule number 4, the rule of pleasure and pain. We violate that. Now, the rules of nature are infinite, but there are some primary rules that have a huge impact on human beings' lifestyle. And these are things you must abide by. In fact, there are 19 specific rules that have a direct impact on our lifestyle that we violate each and every day. Now, I'm just going to go into 4, but throughout discussions, we're gonna deal with all of it. Okay, but now the first one: preservation of self and kind. Preservation of self and kind. Right? You only exist because who? Your mother and father exist. They only exist. Why? Because their mother and father exist. We as an African people used to know that. Meaning, in order for our children to exist, we have to exist. In order for our children to exist, we have to exist. So the first rule of natural nature is preservation of yourself and your kind. Leviathan teaches you self-preservation. Leviathan teaches self-preservation. The whole Caucasian culture is do for self. Worry about yourself. You know, what they say, accomplishments and focus on making it for yourself and blah blah blah. They don't focus on the group. They always focus on the individual. That's Leviathan. Our culture, Wu-Sabat, focus on the group as well as the self. Meaning, if you didn't exist, nothing else would exist to you if you didn't exist. That's why that's rule number one. In order for existence to matter, you have to exist for existence to matter. And once you do exist, you have to acknowledge why you exist. And you only exist because your mother and father exist. And they only exist because their mother and father exist. And so on and so forth. And because we violated this rule, that's why I have here. Our division is the cause of slavery, poverty, violence against ourselves, and the cause as to why we've been unable to solve our own problems so that our life would be better. Listen, it would have been impossible for the Caucasian to enslave us if Africa was united. I repeat, it would have been impossible for the Caucasian to enslave us 500 years ago if Africa was united. It was our division into all these different tribes that allowed us to be conquered. A divided people are easy to conquer. A divided people are easy to conquer. A divided people are easy to conquer. I hope you get that. Let's go on. Number two, the rule of the opposites in nature. We violate this rule every time we choose to live foreign cultures and live under foreign rulership. This is a rule in nature. You can't violate it. Nature is based on opposites, such as up versus down, right versus left, hot versus cold, soft versus hard, black versus white, sweet versus sour, long versus short, strong versus the weak. Each opposite has an opposing polarity or frequency that naturally clash when forced together. So the opposites are opposite because they have opposing polarities and forces. So that's why if you understood the opposites of nature, you know naturally the different races, like the Caucasian race, has a different polarity than the African race. The African race have a different polarity than the Hindu race. That's why you look different on the outside, because the energies that make you up, the spirit forces that make you up, are different, which is your different polarity. You don't force those two polarities together. They clash. We used to know that. But because we're under the spell, we don't know these basic things about nature anymore. Every species in nature was created by nature, having their own unique morphic resonant frequency. When you alter your nature, you naturally become disconnected from your natural nature resonant frequency that takes you out of harmony with natural nature. And once you are out of harmony with natural nature, then the rules and codes of self-destruction is naturally triggered, which is why the world is in chaos today, because we live in a world ruled by the Caucasian who is naturally out of harmony with nature. And because we're living according to their lifestyle and culture, which is adverse to nature, it triggers the destructive forces of nature. That's what the book of Matthew and the Bible, Matthew chapter 24, is talking about, the end of the world and all the destruction, because they knew, those who wrote that, they knew at the end of this cycle, everybody's going to be so out of harmony, out of touch with nature. Nature itself, it triggers the destructive forces, because Ma'at says it must balance out all adverse forces. The principles of Ma'at is about balance in order to have order. And so when you have adversity, things that are adverse to natural order of nature, it triggers the balancing forces of nature. These are things we used to know. But now we're ignorant to this science. The third rule, the rule of love and peace. These are the only forces in nature that can counteract the forces of negativity that plague the world. I repeat, the rule of love and peace. These are the only forces in nature that can counteract the forces of negativity that plague the world. They teach, and that's why the Caucasian has all these nuclear weapons. He called that the deterrent. The only way to keep peace is I have to threaten you with guns and bombs and blah, blah, blah. No, you don't fight negative forces with weapons of death. You fight negative forces with the weapon of peace. It's a frequency, it's a vibration. That's a science. Listen, guys, that's a whole nother science, because I know we've been brainwashed to the Caucasian. We don't even know what love is. That is a science all to itself, and we're going to get into that. That's why I said it's the first principle of our culture is Ashak. But it's a science and it's a spirit force. But let's keep going. The next rule, the rule of pleasure and pain. Pleasure must be offset by pain, and pain must be offset by pleasure in order to maintain balance, aka Ba'at. Humans violate this rule every day by way of overeating, hoarding of material goods and resources, addictions of all kinds that create an imbalancement within the addict, synthetic-based culture thinking it will make life better, such as this is why women get breast implants, because they're out, they're out for pleasure. They think it's gonna make them look better, but that's it. That's adverse to nature. When you're so hooked to pleasure, you're violating, you're creating imbalancement, right? So the other part is synthetic drugs that kills millions of people. You're only doing it because of pleasure. You're thinking that it's going to cure something rather than living a balanced life. Synthetic food that kills millions of people. Synthetic hairstyle that causes health problems and low self-esteem. Competition-based culture that causes great amounts of depression within the atmosphere because of the millions of depressed peoples who hate or feel bad when they lose. Right? People always like to win. They're always seeking the pleasure of winning and winning. But the more you compete trying to win, is the more lost. The more people who are losing. There are more people who lose in things than win in things. And all that, imagine like all these sporting events, right? When the team lose, it creates a depressive state for everyone who loses. All you gotta do is watch people who play professional sports. When they lose, they get down, they start sulking, and they lower their head, and they start fights, and go study high school sports. You find out like parents are fighting and harming each other, they're beating up the referees. It creates a negative energy. And this is happening all over the world. People gambling, they're losing money, they're doing all kinds of things. When the Caucasian created a world of competition, and the people are addicted to it because they're trying to win. They're going after this pleasure. And they don't realize nature offsets that behavior with pain. You have to balance it out. You can't have a culture like that. Always focus on pleasure, and you don't understand pleasure must be balanced with pain. Pain must be balanced with pleasure. These are principles of nature. There are no exceptions to that. We go on. Western culture is a source of these cultural behaviors due to the fact that they promote the desire to gain pleasure and avoid pain at all costs every day in their media, which is the base of their capitalistic society. They always got these commercials, I made $1 million. I'm making $400,000 a month. I'm doing this, and it only took me 4 hours to do it. That's a lie. And we keep each generation, they've been selling those multi-level marketing lies for the last 500 years. There's nothing new. And they keep telling you the rich is getting richer, the poor is getting poor, right? And the gap between the wealth gap between the haves and have-nots is increasing. Don't you understand? European culture comes from European feudalism. This was practiced in Europe, where they had the serfs they call them the serfs and the what was the other name they had for them? The peasants and the serfs. You had the lords of the land, and you had the peasants and the serfs. This is just the modern day version of that. You had the landlords, the rulers, and then you had the vast majority of the people are the serfs who are fighting for crumbs. Because they got everybody competing, trying to get money, trying to get paid. And it creates, it destroys relationships because all this competition, everybody trying to take advantage of everyone. It goes on to say, 6 ether spirits of Leviathan, which are within humanity, are the root cause of this lust and irrational base world culture. And only the spirit forces of 9 ether can overcome the 6 ether spirit forces. 9 ethers it brings you back to reasonability. There would be no need for competition if we're working as a community, as our ancestors always did for thousands of years. We didn't have these issues. And that's just the guys. I'm only talking about the first 4 principles within natural nature that we're violating. There's a bunch more. Okay, but you guys got to become familiar with this information. We used to know this knowledge. Now we don't know this science. We got guys. We have to re-educate ourselves. The master teacher has been writing book after book after book on this subject matter. Right? We wrote this book right here, Breaking the Spell on the Blacks. This book the master teacher wrote back in 2000. This was like the second edition on of this particular book, Breaking the Spell. Okay, and so we put out so many books on these subjects. He put this book out, 30 Spirits, about the different spirit forces that are within us that you have to overcome. These different spirits, the negative forces that's inside our bloodline from all this mixing in for the last 6,000 years. You know, these things we have to learn to overcome all these spirits. You know, we look at we put out, I don't know how many editions of the book of Leviathan. This is one of the books of Leviathan we put out in 1990 or 1989. This came out, right? The first edition of Leviathan, actually, well, the first time he even talked about Leviathan is the Bible Interpretations and Explanations. This book came out in 1967, trying to explain the spirit forces of Leviathan. This is the first time the master teacher introduced. It's one of the first books he published. And in the very first paragraph, look what he reads. 1967, guys. And I read this to you once before, and I'm going to read it again. It says, there is a spell upon the Ethiopian woolly-haired people the world over, and it is a spell of spiritual ignorance and racial indifference cast upon the Ethiopian by Leviathan from the Caucasian and his Bible. And this is why no one has been able to really unite the Ethiopian in any considerable numbers, and is also why the people of African descent have not been able to make real progress towards freedom and equality. With the help of the Caucasian, Leviathan, which is the god of the Caucasian, hypnotized the Ethiopian with his magic powers and sealed the hypnosis with spiritual ignorance and racial indifference. And the only way the spell can be broken and the Ethiopian be free again and free indeed is that the spiritual ignorance be destroyed by spiritual knowledge and understanding, and the racial indifference be destroyed by racial knowledge and understanding. This was written in 1967, guys. 1967. 1989, he put this book out. He put this book, The Luciferian Conspiracy. This is also a book about Leviathan. He put that out in the late 90s. Then he wrote another edition of Leviathan. This came out like in the year 2000 or something. And this was a 4-part series. Leviathan Part 1, Leviathan Part 2. We never got to Part 3 and 4, unfortunately. Well, we got a version of it. We put this actual fact out. Actual fact number 21, the image of the beast. We put this out about 10 years ago. So we're constantly trying to educate our people about the spirit forces of Leviathan. They're inside us. And you have to overcome, you have to perform your own self-exodus to get these spirits out of you. This is why we're in our conditions, guys. Okay. question. Huh? I'll go up to T Tiger. All right, let's see. Is Horus an unfamiliar spirit? And should you have an altar of the deities or us, even us air, water, fire, land as an altar source, wearing a crucifix of the Ankh or the cross? Okay, good question. Yes, you get an altar. So that's step one. You get an altar, right? Now, what Horus, first of all, Horus is an actual ancestor and a metaphor at the same time. Horus is an actual ancestor and a metaphor at the same time. Horus represents your ancestors who have been resurrected. Horus represents your ancestors who have resurrected. I repeat, Horus represents all of your ancestors who are resurrected up into higher abodes. That it's a principle. And yes, you can call on the spirit forces of Horus, the resurrected ones that restored themselves back into their non-ether soul force. So you can make contact with all of your ancestors that have resurrected back into the higher abodes, the positive ancestors. That's who the Nathar is. That's who we're making contact with. All the Africans in our bloodline who are positive, who are in harmony with natural nature. That's who we're calling out to. And so, yes, we create altars. You put pictures of your grandmother. Like the strongest spirit force to contact with is your grandmother on your mother's side if she's transitioned, or your great grandmother on your mother's side if she's transitioned, right? The black woman's bloodline is the strongest line to make contact with. The black woman bloodline is the strongest line to make contact with. Okay, that's why the women in our culture were sacred, and that's why the Caucasian made it his business to destroy the black woman. Look at this picture I got here on the screen. Black women trying to emulate Marilyn Monroe. They lost their identity that they are the goddesses of the earth. The black women, they forgot who and what they are, their powers. And so the Mukasu went out his way to seduce our women. And so our women lost their psychic powers, their spirit powers they used to have. The African women they were the ones in complete harmony and in tune with the earth. That's why they knew what herbs to take, what illness. The black women, the females were the doctors in our community because they were in tune with all the forces. The male, we were in tune with the universe, and the females were in tune with the earth. And so our women were like the rulers on the planet because they were the most connected ones. Our job as men we were there to serve our females and to protect them because she was sacred. The way the black woman healed herself, the first thing she has to correct is her sexual behavior. Our women only had one sex partner. I repeat this. Our women in our culture only had one sex partner. The minute she takes on many partners, those are different spirit forces of the male. She cannot do that. It throws off her frequency. It throws off her vibrations, her morphic resonance, and it disconnects her to nature. She used to know this. She forgot her sciences. And now she's being seduced by the Caucasian and being prostituted by him. And it's the responsibility of the black man to protect the black woman and put her in an environment where she's protected by this demon, away from this demon, I should say. We as black men failed our women because we allowed the Mukasu to conquer us. And once he conquered us, he abused our women however he wanted to treat them. You know you're a broken people when another race of men can do whatever the heck they want to your females. And when the women get violated, that means the children are going to be destroyed. And that's why we're a hot mess as a people. We're a hot mess. But the good news is this is resurrection time. This is resurrection time. Now we have the right knowledge. Now we know what happened to us. So it is our responsibility to correct ourselves. It's our responsibility to fix ourselves, right? That's what we're working to do. We're working to fix ourselves. But what else? Let's see. Question: what do we do about the vaccine they have now? Said they want everyone globally vaccinated by 2022. That's their plan. Yeah, listen, there's not much we can do, unfortunately, because we don't have no power. Black people keep voting for white men to rule them. Black people keep voting for white men to rule them. And so we're not just subject to their poison medicine. We're subject to their poison food. We're subject to their poison atmosphere. We're being poisoned on all levels. Anything they do is designed to alter your morphic resonance, your frequency, your vibration, to keep you to drop you down low, right? So all of it is bad. It's not just the medicine, the so-called vaccines, or whatever the crap they give you. Every drug they produce, every food they make, all of it is bad for us. The only way we're gonna fix ourselves is, that's why I said one of the obligations of being a Sabian. What I said was, I said we had 3 obligations, right? And so obligation number 3 is to work to build Sabbats. We got to get our own land. That's why the disagreeable one took our land from us that we had set up. But we did it in this country. That's why we have to relocate back to the continent. Read in the Bible, Genesis chapter 15, verse 13 said we're going to leave this land and get away from these disagreeable forces. We have no power here. That's the problem. We have no power here, so they can do whatever the heck they want. They the ones make all the laws, the rules, the regulations, and we're forced to obey those laws, rules, and regulations because they got policemen running around with guns who are going to kill you if you don't listen to them. And we have no military force to protect ourselves yet. And we're not even in the right mind to protect ourselves. That's what you have to fix the mind before you can fix the body. You have to fix your mind before you can fix your body. You have to develop your mind before you can develop your body. Our people are trying to do physical things before they do mental things. They're trying to do physical things before they do mental things. And that's why every organization fails, because the individuals they keep recruiting into the organization are mentally weak. And they either subvert their own organization, they go to the enemy, they rat on their own people, they destroy their own selves because their minds are messed up. And that's because these spirit forces, these negative forces in us, you have to fix yourself first, then we can come together. When the mind is united, the physical body will naturally come together, be united. When the minds are united, the bodies will be united. When the minds are united, the bodies will be united. You got to get your mind right first. That's why we put out so much doctrine to teach and educate our people. That's what Reformation is all about. What else? Baba vaccine shot. So no big deal. It's not that it's no big deal that the master teacher got the vaccine shot. Anything coming from the Mukaso is a big deal. But what choice do we have? Yeah, it's crazy. But let's keep going. What if you never met your mom's mother? It doesn't matter. You're connected to your mother's mother by blood. It's in you. You can listen, guys. When you go into the blackness, your ancestors, all of your positive ancestors, you're still connected to them. They're monitoring us. We just lost because our third eye is closed. We don't know how to physically see them anymore, right? And that's why we work to reopen your third eye so you can literally see them and you can actually have a conversation with them the same way you're looking at me, talking to me. You have the ability to make contact with them. They're monitoring you. Literally, I mean that. They're monitoring us. But we stopped talking to them because the Caucasian got us calling on Jesus and Allah, all these unfamiliar spirits. Call on your great grandmother. She knows who you are. She's in your genes. She's in your DNA. You call on her. You find a picture. If you can find it, research her. And you set up an altar and you put your grandmother's pictures there. You can put your father on your father's side too. I just said that the mother side was the strongest connection. The female side is the strongest connection, but you can put your father's side there. Put those pictures up of your ancestors, male and female, and create altars and start communicating with them. That demon told you, oh, that's black magic. Don't do that. Don't blah, blah, blah. It's to cut you off. That's how they cut us off from communicating with our ancestors. And they got us calling on the white Jesus. Or they got us calling on some name called Allah, some freaking name, some unseen force. And you get no help. We got no help because we're not connected. Why do you think the Caucasian is so powerful? He's in communication with his spirit forces. That's who's been giving him all this darn technology. That's how they was able to conquer us, because the Caucasian is literally in contact with his spirit forces. Guys, go research the Nazis. Go research the Illuminati. All of them are in contact with their high spirit forces who told them how to conquer us. Research that. Madame Blavatsky and the Thule Society and these three witches that helped Hitler develop their technology, right? This is why the Nazis, people don't know, the Nazis didn't lose the war. The Germans did. World War II, I'm talking about. The Nazis were in contact with their higher forces from the Aldebaran and the Pleiadians. Research that subject. And so we have to make contact with our ancestors the same way everyone else is doing it. That's why everybody keep telling us don't make contact with your own. They got black people calling on Buddha. You got black people calling on Shiva and Vishnu. Black people calling everything but their own freaking ancestors. And the black people who do call on their ancestors, they call on the negative ones. Why you think, listen, Haiti had voodoo, but look at the situation Haiti's in. Because they're calling on the wrong spirits, the demon ones. You got to learn to call on the spirit forces who were in harmony with nature, the forces of nature, and they don't ask for blood sacrifices, I told you. What else? He said, her update. There are two groups, some saying he did, others saying he never did. So I'm not sure. Yeah, that doesn't matter. I mean, our goal is we won't know until we get the master teacher out of that freaking hellhole. Okay, thank you. Inside, it was confirmed by Tabjet when she went to see Bobby in early May. Okay, that's what's up. Bobby and I said we worry about taking a vaccine, but we continue to eat bad food. Yeah, exactly. That's why we was enslaved. We have no weapons to fight back. You got that right. Understood. Thank you. Okay. How positive do your ancestors have to be? Because every family member are not too nice or mean well. You got that right. No, what I'm saying is this. You are contacted to your bloodline, your families who have you're contacted to your family members who are negative, and you're connected. Excuse me, you're connected to your family members, spirit forces who are negative, and you're connected to your family members, spirit forces who are positive. You know what it means to be positive, right? You know what it means to be righteous. That's why we're teaching this. We're teaching what it means to be righteous. We're teaching what it means to be positive. We're teaching how you're supposed to behave. And so now that you know, this is how your ancestors, the positive ones, lived. And that's who you're calling out to. You're calling out to those ones who were in harmony with nature, those one who was connected to the forces of nature, those one who was tapped into the power of love. Those are the ancestors you're calling out to, those spirit forces. So you don't have to know a specific family member that you may not want to call on, whatever. But I mean, come on, a lot of our family members are loving and positive. The people who took care of you, who was there for you, that might have transitioned. I had beautiful grandmothers, and so they meant well. They was, I know one of my grandmother on my mother's side, of course she was worshiping in that white Jesus, but she meant well. You're going to be judged by your intentions, not by the how can I say, by the actual actions. It's your intent of righteousness. Our people, You have our people who've always tried to be righteous, regardless of the time period they lived in. And then you have people who are just negative, regardless of the time period they lived in. Okay. And so you're calling on the righteous ones in your bloodline. Point being is you're calling on your bloodline. Okay. And you want to make contact with the positive ones because you're literally connected to them spiritually. You're connected to us and they're watching us. They have a listen. Nature demands that this is what law number 1 is. That law is binding on all dimensions. So just like you're responsible for your family here on earth, our ancestors who are on the high dimensions, they're responsible for us on the lower dimensions. So that's why they sent the master teacher. That was the whole point. And the master teacher's job came here to reconnect us with our ancestors that exist on the higher realms. That's why he's here. Say that again. How positive? I saw it on TV last night with the Masons. I'm always in tune with my mom's mother. That is confirmation. It's 100%. That's right. But they were always Christians. That's fine. Remember, I said Christianity comes out of Egypt. Christianity comes out of Egypt. Christianity comes out of Egypt. The Romans plagiarized our culture. Okay, just get the whiteness out of it. They took black and they turned it white. They took black and they turned it white. It was Horus was the golden child, the savior. Okay, he was the Christ child. And so our ancestors didn't know no better, but they had a good heart. Yes, they were worshiping a white Jesus, but they had a good heart. You're going to be judged by your intentions. You're going to be judged by your intentions. The Nathar, our ancestors on a higher abodes, they know that. They know they have right knowledge. The ones who had good intentions, like the master already said, our ancestor George Washington Carver was resurrected. He didn't have right knowledge, but he was a righteous man. I repeat, he didn't have right knowledge, but he was a righteous man. George Washington Carver. He was resurrected. You know? Because I heard it's going to be your family members who deceive you back to earth. The negative ones, the negative ones in your bloodline can do that. But no, listen, no one has the power over you but you. That's why you have to have the right knowledge. It is your doubt, it's fear that and your desires that make you reincarnate again. Keep that in mind. It's your fear and your desires. It's your ignorance to the spiritual realms. That's why our whole doctrine is about re-educating yourself spiritually to learn how to resurrect, to learn how to raise yourself up so you can learn how to go out of body. If you learn how to go out of body, you can make contact now. That's why our whole goal is to make contact while you are alive, not wait till you die. That's what they teach in their religions. Wait till you die and then figure out whether or not you're going to heaven or not. That's silliness. You have the ability to resurrect now. You have the ability to go out of body. Many people do it. You just have to develop yourself spiritually enough. You make contact while you're alive, so you don't have to be guessing. There is no need for guesswork. What do you say? You're welcome. This our job is to spread the good news. Our job is to spread the good news. But these forces, that's the thing. These forces of Leviathan is rooted in deception. See that? Number here, I have it right here. Our goal is to fight Leviathan. Leviathan, the 5 weapons Leviathan uses against us is lust, lies, deception, slander, and gossip. It's killing our people. Lust, lies, deception, slander, and gossip. That's why the master teacher always talked about John. Read John chapter 8, verse 44. John 8:44. They said the nature of the devil, which is lust, lies, and murder. Those are the principles that the disagreeable ones live by: lust, lies, and murder. That's why I put here lust, lies, deception, slander, and gossip, which is what the European Western culture is based on. That American culture is based on these things. Why do you think Donald Trump, they elected this guy, all he did was lie? I'm like, lie. Everyone know, they said porn in the United States is keep increasing. The porn industry, you know, the porn industry makes more money than Hollywood. Do y'all know that? The porn industry makes more money than Hollywood. So what does that tell you about us here in America? And you know that capitalism is based on deception. One corporation trying to take advantage of the people. Each what's that company? Enron, that stole the people's pension. Like that corporation, he stole his own workers' pension money. And you know this slander, all this social media, everything is slandered in this society. You know, talking bad about this person, and all these talk shows, gossip. What's that? Wendy Williams, she the queen of gossip. And the other guy, Star from, you know, he used to be on Hot 97, whatever. All these shows, gossip, or slander. It's poison. Those two, and vitamins A in the pineal gland. Okay, question. What are some good minerals or vitamins to eat or to aid in the pineal gland? I'm not a health practitioner, so I'm not going to attempt to give advice on things like that. My only recommendation when it comes to that is as far as what to put in your body. Excuse me. Unfortunately, a lot of the health people that do deal with health, unfortunately, they don't deal with spirituality, you know, so they do tell you things that you should eat, but a lot of them don't deal with spirituality because unfortunately, our organization, right, probably are the most spiritual Black organization there is, because most of the Black organizations are more materialistic. They're into materialism, so they don't really deal with spirituality, right? Even though they deal with religious dogma, but like the Nation of Islam, they're more materialistic. The Hebrew Israelites are materialistic. The 5% is materialistic. None of them really have a spiritual doctrine because they don't know. That's what I'm saying. Our people have been ignorant when it comes to spirituality. So they don't know anything about the spirit, the soul, the oversoul, going out of body, making contact with interdimensional beings. They don't have that knowledge. That was knowledge exclusively to the master teacher. That's what makes our doctrine so profound, because unfortunately, our people lost their spiritual wisdom. They lost their spiritual science. We stopped practicing that back in ancient Kemet because they started to persecute Wu-Sabat. I meant to get into that. The persecution of Wu-Sabat. Let me just remind you, there was a book I was going to get into, but unfortunately, I didn't have the time. There was a book put out by a good brother. This book right here, I'll summarize it real quick for you because I'm running out of time, but it's called Christianity Before Christ. Christianity Before Christ. You know, the whole Christ concept is ancient. They had like 16 other different Christ figures from other cultures. Just to say that the Romans who came up with this Jesus Christ concept was nothing new. It was all plagiarized. Many cultures had a Christ figure, and this whole book is dedicated to teaching that. But here's the thing, right? What this book, it was trying to teach you here, if you go to this chapter 10, right, it talks about the Gnostics. Who are the Gnostics? This was a spiritual group organization that came out of ancient Greece. There's a spiritual group and organization that come out of ancient Greece. The Gnostics got their wisdom and knowledge from who? The Egyptians, your ancestors. Gnostics means to know. They got it from our culture. We call it noon. And this is where we get NoopooH from. This is where we get NoopooH from. It was called noon. And they called it Gnosis or nous. See this word right here, highlighted, nous. Look it up. It means sound reasoning. That's where we get it from. They got it from ancient Kemet. Okay. Sound reasoning. But what they did was they took noon, the Greeks now, and they turned it into logic. And this is where the concept of logic comes from. They took noon. That's what 6 ether does. They take 9 ether knowledge and turn it into 6 ether knowledge. They take 9 ether knowledge and turn it into 6 ether knowledge. So the Greeks were learning and about their sciences from us, and they were called Gnostics, and they were talking about spirituality and how to develop the Christ consciousness, right? When the Romans took over, they started to persecute the Gnostics. That's what this book is trying to say, that the Romans started to persecute the Gnostics, and they introduced what they call ecclesiastics. What is ecclesiastics? Ecclesiastics was they were trying to teach people to make decisions based on faith and belief and not knowledge, because Gnostics was about knowledge in nature, and the church was about belief systems. So the church started to suppress all of Gnostic teachings, and they started to persecute and kill them off. This happened during the time of the Romans when Constantine and them came into power, right? And so you had Constantine, and then you had Theodorus. He was the one who started to outlaw and close down the temples that we had in ancient Kemet. We had the temples of Set. We had the temples of Asar, and the temple of Philae, which this was in ancient Nubia. And they turned our temples into churches in Egypt. And so they were stealing our culture and rewriting the stories over. And so the people like the Pope, who represents Leviathan is a serpent. I didn't even get into that. Leviathan represents, in the Bible, it's a sea creature, represents the serpent, represents the reptilians. Read Revelations chapter 12, talks about the dragon. Michael fought the dragon, and his forces prevailed not, and they were cast down to earth. We're talking about the forces of Leviathan coming down to earth and ruling the earth. And that's why the serpent, and you got the Pope that represents this serpent. Let me see if I thought I had the Pope and his fish hat. Look at the Pope and his fish hat, which is Dagon. The dragon, which is Leviathan, and the Pope and his fish crown. Let me see if they have a picture of Dagon. You know, and the papal. Leviathan in ancient Kemet was called Apophis. Leviathan in ancient Kemet was called Apophis, and Apophis was called a pap. This is another name for him. Okay, so if you look up Leviathan in this is Wikipedia, right? Leviathan represents a serpent, a sea creature, right? And so the Bible got that from where? They got that from Kemet. It was called a pap in Kemet, or Apophis. And that's where the papacy, which is the Pope, that's where it comes from. With his fish hat, the serpents, they represent the dragon force. This is what Leviathan is all about. And it means the culture of the moon culture, those who did not live in harmony with natural nature, moon culture, the children of the moon, the lunar children, Lucifer, Lu, which is what? Lu means primitive, Lucifer, cipher, primitive cycle, the moon cycle, those who are not in harmony with the sun, the forces of nature, the children of the moon. So this is what Leviathan is all about. And the Pope and the fish gods that they worship, Dagon, the dragon, right? And so Leviathan, just so you notice, Leviathan, what does it mean? Levi stands for Lord. Levi, the sons of Levi from the tribe of Israel. Leviticus is the laws of Leviathan. The whole Bible is the book of Leviathan, the dragon. And the Levi stands for law, and Leviathan stands for sin. Sin goes back to Nanar Sin. Nanar Sin is the moon god in ancient Babylonia, ancient Samaria. Right here, sin. Sin, another name for sin was Su-in or Zu-in. Zu-in stands for what? Zupu. Zupu, that's the cycle. That's the 6 ether cycle, Zupu. You have Zupu and you have Nupu. Zu-in. Zu means the animal cycle. And in means master, the masters of the animal cycle, the masters of the lower cycles. Noon, we represent Noon, the mind, the forces, those who are in harmony with the forces of nature, Noon. And that's why we chant Ya Noon, and we chant Om. This is where the chants of Om and Noon. And so the creative deity in ancient Kemet was called Khanum, Khanum. And the Sands tribe today, I showed you before a video where they called on the forces of Noom, which is the creative forces. And we at war against the children of Leviathan, the children of Zupu. So again, Leviathan means law of sin, the law of sin. Who is sin? Sin right here, look it up in Wikipedia, is the ancient moon god of Mesopotamia. So when the Christians say you're born into sin, that what that really meant was you're born into the cycle of the moon cycle, the cycle of sin. Those who were adverse to nature, those children who are not in harmony with nature, the moon cycle, the sin cycle. That's right. Christianity is a symbol of the fish, which is the reptilians, the Dagons. The Dogons talk about the fish gods. The Zulu talk about these reptilian fish. All you got to do is study David Icke. That's all he talks about, these reptilians. The reptilians represent the Luciferians. That's why we put out that book, The Luciferian Conspiracy. Those who are Lucifer, Lucifer, the lowest cycle. Right? And so you have two groups. You have the Luciferians and you have the Satanists. You have the Luciferians and you have the Satanists. What is the difference? The Luciferians, who are the Luciferians? Who are the Luciferians? Those are the Greeks, aka the Jews. They rule by lust. They represent the blue house. That's why they represent the fish and the water blue, the blue house of Freemasonry. And you have the red house. The red house are the Satanists. They represent the red for bloodshed and war. And that was the Germans. And that's why they was at war with the Jews. And they've been fighting. The Republicans represent the red house, which is the Satanists who are into war and bloodshed. That's why all of the Republicans are with the Nazis and the whole Nazi party, that whole thing, and the Southerners, the ones who practice racism, because the Germans were connected with the Pleiadians, the Nordics, and they're ones that push all this blonde hair, blue-eyed stuff. Go look them up. Look up the Nordics. And then you have the Luciferians, which are the Jews, right? They represent the blue house. That's why they control New York and California. Stands for lust. New York stands for money, Monet, and California stands for what? Hollywood, magic, tricks, lust. That's why most of your black entertainers who hooked them up, who put them on. Jews are the ones who keep giving black people advantages here in the United States. Go look it up. Jews. And so the Germans or the Satanists, the red house, they don't like the Jews. And this goes back to Rome and Greece. And that's why the Romans were persecuting the Gnostics who had that knowledge from Kemet. The Jews were educated in Kemet, known as the Hyksos. And they was using that knowledge to take advantage of the other Germanic tribes. And they were jealous of them. That's why they have the conflict between the Satanists and the Luciferians. And that's why the Democrats and the Republicans are constantly at war with each other. It's a lot, guys. It's a lot, but it has nothing to do with us. Black people are so getting caught up in these ridiculous wars and battles, and none of this stuff has anything to do with us. We need to get out of their way, as the master teacher been saying. When you said, is it true that the first religion came from Akhenaten, the Egyptian ruler, which prohibited the cult of other deities in Kemet and focus only on the one? No, that's not true. Again, no. I know the Mukasu, the Caucasian, puts that silliness out there. But no. Here's the deal. Let me see. Let's go back. First of all, it says, is it true that the first religion, our people in Kemet really didn't deal with religion? Remember, religion deals with belief systems, right? Our people dealt with spirituality. They didn't deal with belief systems. The battle between Akhenaten and the priest of Amun was a cultural dispute. Okay? It was a cultural dispute about spiritual practices. It wasn't about religion. Remember, religion deals with ignorance. Religion basically have no connection to spirit forces. People who are religious, they have no idea what spirit forces they're worshiping. They're worshiping unfamiliar spirits. Akhenaten knew exactly what he was doing, and the priests of Amun knew exactly what they were doing spiritually. They were in disagreement because Akhenaten was like, okay, our people are not making direct contact. That's why most of our people were following the cults of Asar and Set, right? And so the whole point was Akhenaten was like, no, our people can make direct contact with with specific spirit forces. They don't have to just be calling on any ancestor. And so he was basically trying to shut down the priests of Amun, and they killed them for it. Keep in mind, Akhenaten, right? He was what? The son of Amenhotep III, right? And his mother, which is Nisutet T, the female ruler T, right? Now, the female ruler T, she was an incarnation, the master told us. She was a literal goddess that incarnated on the planet. You know, and so all our females, the original black women, they come from Septu or Cyrus. The black male came from Orion. So she actually rules that star system. The females rule in Cyrus, where the males rule in Orion. We call Sahu. You know, and so Akhenaten and them were trying to teach the rituals on how to make direct communication. They was going to open up the portals, the gateways. The master said that's why Akhenaten, he was a hermaphrodite, and his wife, his Hamatet, with Nefertiti, she was a hermaphrodite. And so a hermaphrodite was a male with both sexual organs, and a hermaphrodite was a female with both sexual organs. And what does that mean? That means from a spiritual point, you was able to vibrate on both frequencies, on a male and female frequency in one body. And a person who had that in them, it was easy for them to open up the gateways and the portals, so our people can move into the higher dimensions. That was the whole goal. Remember, our whole culture is about resurrection. And so Akhenaten was trying to set up rituals so that our people can make direct contact and to open up the gateways. And that's what took Amun, King Tut. He was a golden child who was going to open up the portals for our people, for our ancestors. And the sons of Leviathan, through the priests of Amun, they stopped them. They killed him too. Listen, the Egyptian, the dynastic Egypt, really the whole Bible story was plagiarized from talking about our ancestors in ancient Kemet. For instance, Amenhotep III was really King Solomon. That's where they got the story from. Sneferu, he was Noah. That's what the story about Noah that comes from our ancestor Sneferu. And so most of the Bible characters were Egyptian rulers and personalities that ruled in Kemet. The 12 tribes of Egypt was telling about the zodiacs because the Egyptian dynasty were into studying the zodiacs, because that's how they were reading the stars, and that's how our ancestors made decisions based on the different cycles. That's how you knew when a cycle was coming in. They was in tune with this the different star constellations and different spirit forces that were incarnating. So all I'm saying is, again, what did Leviathan do? It made us spiritually ignorant, and it cut us off from this knowledge we used to have about absolute nature. Now people don't know anything about spirit forces. So no, there was a big battle in ancient Kemet over what spiritual science was going to rule. You know, and so, like I said, it was a dispute with Akhenaten, and so they got rid of him, and they got rid of his son. You know, who they call King Tut. They got rid of them, and unfortunately, and so that gave Leviathan, the children of Leviathan, that gave them an extension into the year 2000. You know, and so our ancestors were writing these prophecies. Again, it's how the Bible came about. Our ancestors were writing those prophecies, and they took it. The Romans and the Greeks took those prophecies and put it in the Bible. Leviathan has all children of 6 ether forces, all straight-haired children. You should know that, Tarbuna. All children of straight hair are the children of Leviathan. All children of woolly hair by nature are children of Nupu and Noon, 9 ether. Unfortunately, because of all the race mixing, our people have those spirit forces in them now. Because we were unfortunately, we were invaded. This planet was invaded by 6 ether forces. And that invasion started 18 million years ago. Where did the ancient cultures go, like the Olmecs and the Mayans? He said it seems like they just vanished. Some of them did. Some of them went inside the inner earth, right? And others went off world, were taken off world, off the planet. Those who were in tune, you know, and so those who were in tune left the planet. A lot of our ancestors, that's why they left a lot of the ancient monuments and all that they were built. They built all of those ancient monuments. All of the ancient monuments were aligned with different star constellations, right? When the planets were in alignment, when the cycle changed, it lost those different monuments, lost their spirit powers. And so the elders left, the masters left the planet because they knew that the cycles was changing into a moon cycle. And that's how those spirit forces and the children of Leviathan were able to come to this planet. The Pleiadians and the reptilians were able to come to this planet and do what they were doing. They created the whole race. This is what the whole Honorable Elijah Muhammad was trying to teach about Yaqub Graf the devil. The Caucasian was an experiment. And that's why the Muqasa went to war in Iraq to get rid of the evidence in the temples in Iraq. And they don't tell people about the temples in Seti. The temple of Seti in ancient Kemet has a whole story of how the Caucasian was grafted and how the genetic experiments to create the Muqasa. And the Caucasian, he spends a great deal of energy trying to erase his origins, so people don't know how they were genetic. Basically, they were a genetic experiment. The Caucasian race from his overlords, the Pleiadians. Guys, research the Nazis. The Nazi party. They know the story. The Nazis, they will tell you how they got to this planet. That's what Madame Blavatsky and all of them were trying teach. I supposed to learn. How am I supposed to learn your language? Because I don't understand the prayers you speak at all. That's okay. I'm like, well, here's the thing. We have books on it, right? We have books on the alphabet. Okay, I only do the prayers just to introduce you guys into our language system, right? And all, because language is about tones, vibration, frequency, morphic resonance. Your body vibrates. When you alter your genetics, you alter your vibration, and it connects you with different spirit forces. That's why the Caucasian had to rape our ancestors to get his spirit forces in us. Okay. And so language is about recalibrating you. If you go back to the movie Roots, the first thing that the slave master did had to alter your language to teach you English. English is a dead language. It has no tones. Your body don't vibrate. Our language, that's why when you study our language, we have different letters in it that have certain sounds where you'll start enunciating certain sounds that you normally don't say because English doesn't have those sounds in them. Or those tones. And that's why we're vibrating at such a low frequency. And when you're vibrating at a low frequency, it reduces your intelligence level. And because our people being plagued with spirit forces of Leviathan, it stomps their reasonability. They can't figure out what's being done to us. Okay, what Buna said? Leviathan is a giant sex force. Leviathan is the moon god and is already announced that Tahuti is good. I'm not sure what that means. Tahuti and Leviathan are one and the same. No, that sister, you're reading. I keep telling you guys, you're reading one book, and because of that, you guys are getting confused about it. Here's what you don't understand. 9 ether, right? When 9 ether comes into a cycle where 6 ether is ruling, the job of 9 ether is to turn that which was 9 or that became 6 back into 9. And when 6 ether comes into power, it takes 9 knowledge and turns it into 6. So when the Greeks was able to take over, they was taking, that's why I said when the Greeks conquered Kemet, they was taking 9 knowledge and turned it into logic. That's what created the Gnostics. They was taking our sciences and converting. This is a person, go research guy by the name of Francis Bacon. That's what he did when the Moors was ruling Spain. They was taking our knowledge. That's why in the scientific community, our science was based on empirical science and metaphysical science. When the Caucasian came in, they took our knowledge of science and they took metaphysics out of it. And they only teach empirical science. What they do is they take 9 knowledge and turn it into 6. So when we was teaching about the Hutui, they turned it into that 6 ether deity. That's why they changed the names to Hermes and Pan and the whole 9 yards. They alter our sciences. So it's a lot you guys just don't know. And it's not remixing, sister. You're just not aware of the science. I don't understand. She said, I don't understand. How long you been studying? You're going to say, I don't understand. And all. 9 ether doesn't exist. That's not true. And y'all need to stop saying that falsehood. That's not true. Stop listening to Tanun and his silliness. 9 ether is what is the one that turns 6 ether into back into 9. Those who've been converted. 9 ether is what pulls the smack up. And all. So you don't know what you're talking about. And all 9 ether forces is what pulls the smack up. The nature makes that very clear. You should know that by now. You need to stop saying that 9 ether. 9 ether always exists. You just don't know anything about the multiverse and the omniverse. You're stuck on universal knowledge and you don't have multiversal knowledge because you have a limited doctrine. And that's why you're saying what you're saying. The stuff you're saying is half information, and it's not untrue. Scientists has already proven that the multiverse is real, sister. Look up my man, what's that Japanese scientist? Makuku Kacha. I mess his name up, but he's the one that came up with string theory. But they already know that obviously that there has to be other universes. They're learning this now that as they're tapping into quantum mechanics, they're learning that. And so that's why the second principle in that in absolute nature is the law of the opposites. For every universe that's in the cycle of Leviathan, there's a universe that's in the cycle of NoopooH. And these beings, these interdimensional beings, are able to go from universe to universe. You guys just don't know anything about it. In fact, it teaches you that if you study the nine ball and the nature, not the nature, but the nine ball and the Bible interpretation, it talks about in the nine ball you have opposite universes. You guys are just wrong. I'm not wrong. You're wrong. You said I'm wrong. You're wrong, sister. You're completely wrong. All of you guys are wrong. But anyway, it's all good. It's said I'm wrong. That's funny. I'm like, this young lady is new in the information. I've been in this teaching this information and been in this doctrine before all of them in a whole organization, guys. Literally, I predate everyone in their organization. They're just learning this stuff. I've been aware and teaching this information. All of them are new, and yet they're telling someone who's been doing this way before them that I don't know what I'm talking about. It doesn't make any sense. You know, I've been out here teaching and helping out people for over 30 years in this information, you know, but I don't know what I'm talking about. That's sad, but this is the problem. Like I keep saying, it's the negative mind that creates the division, the debating, the arguing, the disputes. Our people are stuck in those negative forces and they can't control themselves, you know, because it creates a self-righteous attitude. Like the sister, she just thinks she's so right. And that's what that spirit force does. It creates that self-righteous mindset. You know, if you have facts, then teach the facts rather than debate and dispute with me. Put your data out, just, you know, present it to the people, because that's all I've been doing. If anyone who watches all of the lectures that I put out, I always try to show the data where I get the information from. I try to correlate it to references for everyone to learn, so that you can discern for yourself. You can research for yourself. I don't have to go on anyone's, you know, sites and debate their doctrine and all. What's the point? Because we live on a planet where many people have many doctrines, you know, and it becomes pointless. As the Christians teach, when the truth comes, false things perish, and all. So if whoever has the truth, teach the truth. False things will perish, because if you want to get people away from unrighteousness, and you don't want people to be tricked and deceived, then teach the truth. It will overshadow deception, you know, as I say. But the negative mind can't help itself. They have to dispute. They have to debate, and she's a good example, guys. So learn from her. Learn what the negative spirit forces do. It makes you self-righteous. It makes you not listen. It makes you uncooperative. It makes you always disagree. That's what we talk about. These forces are disagreeable. And they can't control themselves. They have to debate. They have to complain. They have to accuse and always pointing fingers, right? Slander, like I said, that's one of the forces of Leviathan. It's the constant slander, always accusing someone of something. And they can't help themselves. And all they do is disagree. If you look at every statement she makes, everything is a disagreement. No agreement. And that's not even nature. Everything in nature is balanced For every good, there's bad. For every bad, there's good. There's always a balance. And they're in an absolute category. They'll put themselves in an I'm absolute right versus absolute wrong. They'll say they're right and someone else is wrong. And so let this be a lesson to you guys that this is what's keeping our people divided. That's why the tribes in Africa, they're divided because they're constant disputing on, this is my way. And no one wants to come together and negotiate and focus on the things they can agree with. This is how we overcome our division, because it is our division that keeps us divided. Us constantly disagreeing. And what are the disagreements about? It's about culture. All disagreements come from cultural disputes. Keep that in mind, family. All disagreement comes from cultural disputes. All wars come from cultural disputes. And you have fanatics that think they're right. And that's why you got those crazy Arabs going around blowing up people, because they're fanatical. And they swear they're right and you're wrong. And you got the Christians doing the same thing. This is what creates fanaticism. And the sister doesn't realize she's turning herself into a fanatic. Always complain about someone's wrong and they're right. So, okay. On that note, please explain Cannon being a albino. Was he just a genetic mistake or planned for other beings? Yeah, Cannon was an albino. That was due to our ancestors mixing in with Hindus, and the Pleiadians, that's from that albino genetic came from the Pleiadian bloodline. That's why I was telling people to research the Germans, the Nazis, man. They teach this stuff. they teach about their origins. That's why the swastika, the symbol that they use, that's who uses that symbol. The Hindus. That's it. The swastika, that was a Hindu symbol that they use. And the Nazis were constantly studying Hindu culture and Tibetan culture. And they teach that they come from the Aldebarans and the Pleiadians, but they the albino. Keep in mind, the Caucasian is nothing but the albino children of the Hindus, and that was the whole birth of Cannon concept, and all. And so that's a whole nother discussion that we will get into at a later date in our discussions, but at this time, we're gonna sign off. We're gonna do an end in prayer, and then we're gonna sign out until next week. We'll continue our discussions. I want to send peace and love out there, Ashak, to everyone. Okay, because it's only through the positive mind, it's only through the power of Ashak, the divine love, that we're going to overcome the negative forces that are against us. Our first battle is within ourselves. We got to conquer the negative energy within ourselves. We got to show love to our people. So I'll always go send love out to my sister here, Tar NoopooH, regardless of what her debates are and her disagreements are. It doesn't matter. We're going to teach the truth, and that's it, because you have to. Truth is self-authenticated. Let me just say that truth has to be self-authenticated. Each individual has to authenticate the truth. Not that. See, that's that Caucasian doctrine that teaches our people to listen to somebody and believe. And that goes back to belief. There's nothing I say you're supposed to believe. Your job is to study, research. That's why my job is to give you the data, and your job is to research and authenticate the data. So I thank Tara Buna, because she's helping you guys out, because she's making a good point. Because by disputing what I'm saying, that's a great point. But the reason why she's doing that, because that comes from our people being indoctrinated with religious mindset, because religion taught our people just to listen to dogma and just accept it. And guys, don't do that with me. Don't do that with the master teacher. We always taught, guys, research the data, check it out. Don't believe no one. Research it. You're supposed to know these facts because this is your soul is on the line, and so anybody can teach. I know what's facts and true for me, what I've authenticated based on my time. You guys have to learn this. So you have to put the time in, the research in. I try to make it easy for you guys because I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And so I'm trying to help you guys identify the data as best I can and direct you to the facts. But your job is not to believe what anyone says. It's to authenticate the facts for yourself. That's what this is all about. And the first step is the journey within. That's why we always taught spiritual development. You'll know whether or not the facts about spirituality is true or not if you start doing the rituals that I keep telling you how to do. Then you don't have to believe it. Then you'll know if it's true or not. But what was that? This is arrogance and extreme level. Okay, at least follow what Hotep says. That's right. Take advice from the ignorant as well as from the wise, since there is no single person who embodies perfection, nor that's right. Spirit being, okay, please tell me how non-ether exists, please. Okay, I told you before, non-ether always exists, Tarn Buna. You got to understand that first of all, the nature makes it very clear. It's non-ether that pulls up the smack. Think about that. It's non-ether that pulls the smack up. Okay? And so it talks about universe scientists. If you read the nature, guys, I know a lot of people don't have access to those books, right? But if you read the nature, it talks about is the universe scientists who are the ones who was guiding and giving Afro Uno this data. Those universe scientists are non-ether beings. And they're coming from parallel universes. That's why if you read the 9 ball, it talks about parallel universes. So when you have a universe that is in the cycle of Zupul, you have a parallel universe in the cycle of Nupul. And these beings are interdimensional. They're able to travel from universe to universe. Guys, are you paying attention to the UFO phenomenon that the government is now exposing, that this stuff is real? These are interdimensional beings that are able to transverse the omniverse. And you have 6-ether beings doing it, and you have 9-ether beings doing it. Research this. This is important data. So yes, 9-ether always exists. Always exists. Don't get confused about one universe. This is just one universe out of an omniverse of universes existing in many different cycles. These beings are not trapped into no one universe. Y'all just misreading the nature. And like I said, y'all only had it's limited data. The nature books tell you itself it's limited data. I've explained that to you guys. So I repeat, read the 9 ball series. It makes it very clear that existence deals in opposite. First of all, the nature tells you that's law number 2, which is the law of the opposites in nature. So when you have a universe that's in Nupul, you have a universe that's in Zupul, and vice versa. If you have a universe that's in the 3-ether cycle, you have a universe in opposing forces. That's why we put this out. Let me just show you guys this, guys. When we put this out, now look at this, right? So let's say we're in 3 south here. The opposite to 3 would be 9 north. There would be a universe in 9. And when you have the 4, the opposite to 4 would be 8 west. And 5, there's always an opposite there. That's why I always act based on the number of 12. Everything is based on 12 by 12, which is 24. This whole freaking solar system is based on 24 hours in a day, 24 karat gold, 24,000 year cycle. The human body has 24,000 genomes. There's a science in 24. That's why all of those religions was based on the zodiac, based on 12. You have 12 physical and 12 spiritual, 24. And that's why they talk about the 24 elders. And you have the 12 occult nerds in the brain, physical, and 12 spiritual occult nerds, 24 again. There's sciences here, and it's high mathematics that our people are just not, they don't have that knowledge anymore. I told you what praying is about. Our ancestors always pray. Religion deals with ignorance. Prayer is a science that our ancestors had based on harmonic tones. Keep in mind, the universe is based on harmonic tones. Everything in nature is based on morphic resonance and frequencies. I know that your doctrine is not teaching you that. You don't have that knowledge. That's why you guys don't know anything about language. And you're still speaking English, and you don't realize that's what's keeping 60 to spirit forces in you guys, because you don't understand you have to raise your vibration to get those spirit demons out of your nature. And you guys don't know anything about the oversoul. And we're going to do classes on the oversoul and what is soul and what is spirit and the difference between the two. There's just so much you guys don't know. It's so much, man. But we're gonna get there. That's my job. We're gonna get there. When we pray, okay, just so you know, I made this clear, and this is very important. Prayer is a communication system, right? And so our ancestors who, as you look at this mat circle, right? So you have the 3 south, and then you have 4. You have the 4 east. This is a 4 ether. When the universe is in the 4 ether state, 5 ether, 6 ether, 7 ether, 8 ether, 9, right? Each, you have universes that are existing in all of these dimensions, okay? And you have black people exist in every dimension on this mat circle. Black people are existing throughout the boundless multiverse. And so when we say a black person has resurrected, an ancestor is resurrected, they moved up into a 4 ether, 5 ether, all the way up to 9 ether cycles. They exist in those higher abodes or higher dimensions, and we have the ability to make contact with them. So prayer was a system that we established, our ancestors, to recalibrate your morphic resonance, your vibration, your genetic vibration, to alter your frequency, to communicate with them. It's a form of, it's like a form of affirmations. This is one of the reasons why you teach, people do affirmations. It's like, in fact, it's the same technology why they do television programming. It's to program and calibrate people into a certain type of mindset and thought process, which is what 6 ether has done to us. They calibrated us to their culture, which is Western culture, and dropped us out of African culture. That's why we have no connection. So prayer is to recalibrate you back into an African state of mind and consciousness. That's why we do prayer systems, to make contact with our ancestors who exist on higher dimensions, higher spirit forces who are positive. We have ancestors who are negative, and we have ancestors who are positive. Unfortunately, most of our people are contacting the negative forces in our bloodline, and not the positive forces. And you learn how to make contact with the positive forces in our bloodline once you understand the culture that they lived and how they lived and how our ancestors live on higher dimensions, the principles they live by. And that's why we keep explaining we live by the principles of Ma'at based on the wisdom of the Hutwi. That's why if you read the nature talks about the laws of nature. Where do you think those laws of nature come from? All that stuff was taught out of Kemet under the school of thought, the Hutwi, and that just represents the universal mind. That's all it means. It represents the 9 mind. When the Caucasian came in, they turned from Tahuti to Hermes, and they turned it into the 6 mind. Remember, 6 always takes 9 knowledge and turns it into 6. Keep that in mind, guys. Everything is about the laws of opposites. That's why the master teacher represents the son of righteousness. The son of righteousness is to take 6 doctrine that they plagiarize and turn it back into 9 doctrine. Okay. How allow him to handle the fire? She can be. Okay. We pray to our ancestors. That's right. You know, prayers are communication, but keep this in mind, sister. Prayer and meditation go hand in hand. So you don't just do prayers, you do meditation. That's why I teach that. Meditation is a system of learning to tap into the higher dimensions when you listen. So you do a prayer system to communicate, and you do a meditation system to listen to those forces. Once you learn how to tap in to the positive side of your bloodline. Again, everything in existence based on opposites. Don't forget that. Nothing's one-sided. Okay, I keep telling this, sister. Okay, and so other than that, we'll pick this up because there's so many more classes for us to deal with, and hopefully in time, my beloved sister Tar Numbu will see. We pray again. Like I said, prayer is a form of affirmation and a form of communication. Okay, positive attributes, things that you put in your mind of what your abilities are. Remember that prayer is a form. That's where they got that from our ancestors. Our ancestors always had prayer systems and all, and it was a form of affirmations and communications. Remember that prayer systems is a form of affirmations and communications with your ancestors who does exist on higher dimensions, because there's no such thing as death, guys. That's an illusion. 3 ether teaches death. There is no such thing as death. So when a family member transitions, they either move into a higher abode or they stay on a lower abode. Remember that, guys. There's no such thing as death. So when an ancestor transitions, they either move into a higher abode or they stay on a lower abode. Okay. That's why all you got to do is study the near-death experience, and all these people talking about how they're meeting different ancestors or whatever, or different spirit forces. There is no such thing as death. That's an illusion. It's a difference what a dimension you go to, where you ever able to resurrect to a higher abode or you stay on a lower abode. But as I keep saying, we'll be here all night. But let me go. And like I said, I'm gonna end it with our prayer system, and then I will see you guys next week, and we'll carry this discussion because we did a lot, and I hope it's helped. I really hope it's helped, and I hope you guys were able to learn and grow from this discussion. But until I'll be here next week, and we'll talk more. Until then, why do? Abdul Kalam Namasat Wubazun Ameh Kasamun Afar Pa Ut. Anuki Jawaf Pa Ashuk M Pa Ut. Wu Kalat Ashuk Kawun Jawaf Naya. Anuki Kasamun M Pa Ut. Wu Pa Ut Kawun Kasamun M Naya. Anuki Wahu Ama Pa Ut. Wu Pa Ut Kawun Wahu Ama Naya. Naku Kador Nachu Naju Ama Kasamun M Pa Ut. Wu Khabu Ama Shikasun. Naku Kador Kawan Kala Pafaf Naku Daya Jawab Pa Bot. Amar Wasu Amar Dayani Kwun Lake Bakui Jawab Pa Bot. Anuki Yabab Bi Nafasni. Pa Bot Kawun Anuki. Pa Bot Kador Nakuk Kador. Pa Bot Amu Nakuk Amu. Lahehum Manahnun. Layahum Manahnun. Ahumata Karahum. Ahumata Karehkum. Ahumata Karehnun. Ahumata Jawafnaya. Ahumata Naya Wu Anuki Hum. Ye Ashuk Re'e. Asmua Jaye Nun. Ye Notaro Akfuk Nun. Anunata khura'ukum. Ye unataro afuknun. Akfuknun. Ye unataro nun. Anun. Atun. Atun. Amen. Okay. All right, guys. Oh, and next week when I come back, I will address that language question about because I like that about what's this language about, who speaks the language, and the science behind misbatia, right? The science behind misbatia. That is a very maybe we'll do our class on that because that's a very important subject matter to understand why it's important to speak this particular language, a misbatia. You guys do need to know that, and I'm going to give you guys access. So probably maybe that's what we'll talk about. We'll deal with language next week and about all of the African languages because I'm gonna address them. I'm gonna address all our languages and why this particular language is important for us as an African people to speak in specific. Okay, so until then. I say again, I love you all, and why do?